This morning I'm going to talk about patience and joy. I'm going to start with Colossians chapter 1, verses 9 through 12. Colossians 1, come on boys, Colossians 1, 9 through 12. This is one of the prayers that's in our list of prayer scriptures. And if you ever need one of those, I keep that file on my computer. I can always print some more out because those are beneficial for you to pray for yourself, for your family, for the leaders of our country, for anybody and everybody that you need to pray for. These scriptures are beneficial, but we're going to focus primarily on the one in Colossians 1. In the New King James, it says it this way: "For this reason we also, since the day we heard it, do not cease to pray for you and to ask that you may be filled with the knowledge of his will, in all wisdom and spiritual understanding, that you may walk worthy of the Lord, fully pleasing him, being fruitful in every good work and increasing in the knowledge of God, strengthened with all might, according to his glorious power, for all patience and long-suffering with joy, giving thanks to the Father, who has qualified us to be partakers of the inheritance of the saints in the light." If you read that slowly and you think about what he's saying, you're going to realize that he's focusing on your inner life. I told you there's going to be a theme here. He's focusing on the inner you, your spiritual growth and your relationship with God. When you really look at this, it'll change the way you pray. Most of us are looking at our outer life. We're thinking about what's going on out here. But as we've talked about, we are spirit, soul, and body. When this body lies down, whether Jesus returns and I go to meet him, or whether this body passes, I don't die. The body dies. It'd be like if I took this shirt off and dropped it, you wouldn't say my shirt died. I'm just not in it anymore. But I'm still here. I'm just going where I belong. I'm the real me. The spirit man is the real man. That's the man that God recreated when you accepted Jesus. You're a spirit being. He made all of us spirit beings. You're going to go where you belong when you leave this body. And when you accept Jesus, you belong with him. So that's the real you. We have to always remind ourselves about the real us on the inside. And it looks like you. Your body was made to conform to your spirit, not the otherwise. So when I see you in heaven, I'll know who you are. I'll be like, "Hey, Jim." We'll all look better there. So any of the imperfections that you aren't happy with now, they won't be there. Things will be perfect in heaven.
When you start getting haircuts, Greg.
Greg will have hair again.
Start saving up money again.
But when we look at things this way, we realize the important thing, because once again, like I said last week, when you come to the end of your life, are all the things you're concerned with today, this week, this month, are those the things you're going to be thinking about on your deathbed? Are those the things that are going to be the big concerns when you're about to say goodbye to your family and go to heaven? No. And the reason I bring that up is because this brings out the importance of what's really valuable. The things of the Spirit, the things that are lasting, are the things that are valuable, because you're not going to take any of this with you. You could amass a great fortune, and you know what? It's going to still be here. I had an uncle that saved money like a miser. He dropped dead of a heart attack, and my aunt traveled the world. She didn't have to go without like he forced them to all those years. But you know what? That's all going to stay here. You may buy vast swaths of land, But when you go to heaven, somebody else will be on that land. It won't be you. You'll be in heaven. You won't care. But none of that is going to be a big legacy. The legacy you're going to leave are the things you do in the Spirit. So let's look at this. Look at your inner life. When we're strong on the inside, the things on the outside fall into place. Think about it. You know people that fall apart easily. People that panic easily. Those are people that it's difficult for them to handle problems because everything that comes up, they freak out. They panic. They hyperventilate. They're always wanting somebody else to come rescue them because they're not strong on the inside. They need help all the time. As Christians, we need not to be flaky and weak. We need to be strong because we're going to have problems. Jesus didn't say, oh, you accept me and everything's going to just be laying back in a hammock and eating your favorite food and somebody will be swaying it for you. No, he said, you're going to have trouble. But don't be afraid. I've overcome the world. Well, now you think about that. It's like, that means all the trouble that comes your way, Jesus already overcome it. He's already overcome it. So everything's not going to always go the way you like. But if you're strong and stable on the inside, it equips you to trust God and rely on His grace. And that's the key right there. You're always going to have things that aren't the way you like. But can you trust God enough that His grace is sufficient? Can you trust God that everything's going to be fine, even when it looks like all hell's broken loose? When Paul prayed for the churches, he never prayed for them to avoid problems. He didn't pray for them to overcome them. He prayed they would endure their hardships with strength, faith, patience, and trust in God. That means we have something to learn here. A lot of times we're wanting to pray, oh, I want this problem to go away. Well, of course we want the problems to go away. But many times we're going to have to go through it. It isn't going to be just vanish. We're going to have to go through the problem. But as Randall used to say, we walk through the valley. We don't camp out there and decide, okay, this is where I live now. Oh, woe is me. I live in the valley of problems. No, there's those people too. And I loved it when I was able to tell him that I saw in Mexico, going down a four-lane freeway basically, and there was a van with a tarp on the side of it parked down in the ditch. They were living there. And Randall used to say that all the time. He used to say, you go in the ditch, you don't just decide, okay, this is where I'm getting my mail. I live here now. No, you get out of the ditch. But there were actually people that, I don't know why, but they were living in this van in the ditch. And there's people that live their lives that way. Oh, this terrible thing happened. This is my life now. Woe's me. Everything's awful. No, don't live there. Go through it. God's grace is sufficient. Paul prayed that they would endure hardships with strength, faith, patience, trust in God, that they would persevere through trials with joy. With joy. We're supposed to have joy when we have trouble? Yes. Joy is not happy. Joy is a deep-seated spiritual strength. Joy is something you have even when there's trouble. Joy is something you have even when things are going wrong. Joy is a fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, patience. All those things are of the Spirit. Those can be things that can be present even when things are going wrong. Look at what it says in the Amplified on Colossians 1:11. We pray that you may be invigorated and strengthened with all power according to the might of His glory to exercise every kind of endurance and patience, perseverance and forbearance with joy. Has anybody ever asked you to pray that they would endure their difficulties with joy? All the times people ask you to pray, have they ever asked you to pray that? They haven't me. They pray they be delivered from their problems. Nobody's happy about their problems. But Paul teaches we can be joyful in the middle of them. While we're having problems, we can have joy. If we trust God. See, the trust of the grace of God, the trust of the love of God, the trust of who He is in us should be more than enough than any problems we face. And that's the key. Do we trust God? Do we really trust the Father, Creator, who lives within us by His Spirit? Do we trust Him enough that when we're in the middle of that overwhelming problem, it's like, piece of cake, no problem. God's got this. I'm good. I mean, I looked at it this way one time. It's like, you can be facing something so bad that maybe you think it's going to kill you. Okay, so I go to heaven. That's a good thing. Do I want to leave now? No, I'm not done here. But if I do leave now, I go to heaven, and it's better. Paul said being absent from the body is to be present with the Lord, and that's better. He said it's far better. So why should we sit around being afraid of a problem that we might kill us? Somebody could hold a gun to my head. It's like, okay, you pull the trigger, I go to heaven. Unless my angel kills you first. Which that could happen too. But when he sees that angel, remember, was it James Wilkerson that wrote the Cross and the Switchblade, I think? Where the gang leader held a gun to his head? Well, it might have been a knife. It was a knife in that situation. But there was one where he held a gun to his head, because James Rackley told about that one. He held a gun to his own head. It wouldn't go off. It misfired. I mean, there's a lot of things that can happen when you trust God. God is certainly able to change our circumstances, and we believe for that. I'm not saying we don't believe God to help to change our circumstances, but if we're always, sometimes we get all in this thing of, why God, why? Why did this happen to me? We're not trusting God. We're doubting God. We're like, why didn't you do this so that I could still be comfortable on pushing the remote control on the couch? Why did you have this happen so that I'm facing this instead of being with my friends having fun? Instead of trusting God that in the midst of this, He will prove Himself faithful, He will teach me, He will strengthen me, I'll go through this and come out the other side stronger. A lot of times, we need to change our attitude in the midst of trouble. Because are we trusting God when we're questioning Him? It'd be like me asking Jim's advice for something that he knows about how to do, and then in the middle of it, I'm like, really? Is that really the way that works? And he'd be looking at me like, you asked my advice, didn't you? I know how to do this, you don't. It's up to you. You want to do it my way, or you want to keep fumbling around with what you don't know? That's what we do to God all the time. It's like, I know you're God, but do you really know what you're doing? That's kind of what we're doing. But He's interested in changing us. And that's what it comes down to. A lot of times, the problems that we run into, it starts with us. A lot of our problems are self-caused. There may be things that we didn't directly do, but yet, because we weren't grown up enough to be prepared for it, we ran into more problem than we would have if we were grown up and mature and handled it the way we should have. I mean, we see little kids do it all the time. I mean, you hear parents talk about a kid freaking out and having a fit because their sandwich wasn't cut the right way, or they didn't get the right kind of fruit they wanted. I mean, it's not exactly a disaster, but in the little immature brain, it is. And, as I like to quote Jesse a lot, sometimes in the church, we're running around in our Pampers and we're throwing fits over things that don't really matter. We're not trusting God. We're like, God, why did you let this happen to me? After all, I'm supposed to be fat, dumb, and happy all the time. which may be part of the problem. He doesn't enjoy seeing us struggle or suffer, but he does delight in our spiritual growth. He uses our circumstances for good. All things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to his purpose. He's able to actually use bad things. I mean, I've had a lot of bad things happen in my life that, you know what? Now when I go back to how I came through it, it's a good thing. Not that the bad thing happened, but that I grew stronger and I learned something going through it. And you know what? I know I can survive a lot more than I thought I could before. I'm stronger than I was before because I've survived some things that I thought would kill me. And they didn't. If we're honest, we have to admit we've gained more inner strength, more spiritual maturity through the hard times than we have the easy times. When we've got it easy, it's easy to kind of slack off your time with the Lord, slack off your time in the Word, slack off your time in prayer. It's easy for people to slack off their time in church because, you know, hey, we got this stuff going on and God understands. Nobody's making you come. So it isn't like, you know, like a church we went to one time. There isn't that old lady in the back row with a clipboard keeping track. I kid you not, she did. And we got questioned when we missed a Sunday. No, we don't do that here. God isn't keeping score in such a way like you're going to get to the gates in heaven and Peter's going to say, well, your church attendance was about 73%. Should have been more like 85, but you know, your entrance is not based on that. But those things are all a part of it's like you go to school. How much should you be in class? If you don't pass that particular class and you weren't there very much, whose fault is that? If you don't pay much attention, don't take notes, don't really study the material and you fail the test, whose fault is that? And yet a lot of people are like, why God, why? Why did this happen to me? And they did it themselves. Immaturity. We're all immature in some way or another, and you shouldn't beat yourself up over it. I mean, you need to be more honest with where you are. If you've been in the church for 40 years, doesn't mean you're mature. If you haven't been growing, you have to put some effort into growing. You have to study, you have to pray, you have to spend time with God, and you have to exercise your faith. You have to do things to grow. And if you're not doing those things, you're just sitting in the pew. That doesn't mean you're spiritually grown up. It just means you've been around it a long time. And unfortunately, that means you know better, but you aren't doing it. Problems and difficulties are not fun, but they do strengthen us. They stretch our faith. They teach us to trust God instead of relying on our own knowledge. Look at Proverbs 3, 5 and 6. Proverbs 3, 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not depend on your own understanding. Seek his will in all you do, and he will show you which path to take. There we are, guidance again. He'll show you which path to take. You know, that still small voice of the Lord can be so valuable when you run into places where it looks equally good. Oh, I could do this, I like that, I could do this. Oh, these both look so good, I don't know which way to go. He does. He knows if you take this path, what's going to happen. He knows if you take this path, what's going to happen. And even when you take the wrong path, he knows how to get you back on course to the path you should be on. We develop compassion toward others when we endure hardships. We don't get so high and mighty about who we are as a Christian and how well we're developed and how mature we are when somebody else has problems, and we don't look down on them, criticize them, and we've gone through a problem ourselves. Randall used to talk about Smith Wigglesworth, how he was very, very forceful. He was very bold in his faith, but he wasn't exactly nice to people lots of times. he was angry with sickness and disease robbing people, and he would kind of take it out on the people a little bit. He'd be really harsh with them. And after he faced some sickness and disease himself, he got softer. He got more compassionate. No, I'm not trying to say you need to be sick to have that, but we do need to learn. When we go through difficulties, we can learn other people have difficulties too, not just us. And that's another maturity thing. When you're young, it's, oh, why me? And then you get to know other people have worse problems. You leave the country, you find out there's a lot of, our poor people have it good compared to other countries. And you begin to mature a little bit and realize how blessed you are. Paul believes there's a connection between trials, patience, and joy. James seems to believe that the same way, and he says that our trials are all joy. Look at James 1, 2 through 4. Let's just go over there because I think we should read it ourselves. It's right after Hebrews. James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. If you get to Peter, you went too far. James 1, 2 through 4. Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. What does a bodybuilder do? He tests and strains and tries his muscles. I used to, when I first learned to lift weights, I did what they call a teardown. You lift as much weight as you can lift as many times as you can. And you lift that and lift that and lift that and lift that. And when you can't lift it anymore, you go to a lesser weight and you lift that as much as you can, as much as you can, till you can't lift that anymore. That tears your muscles. And then they heal bigger. That's the way you build muscle. You strain them, you try them, you test them, you push them, and they get bigger. When your endurance is tested, it has a chance. When your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. Athletes know that they have to push themselves. They're not going to be an elite athlete if they don't push themselves, because the other guy is, the other girl is. They're pushing themselves. And if you don't push yourselves, they're going to whip you. And you're going to wonder, why me? You didn't work, they did. So let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. We need to be strong Christians. In the end times, there's going to be people looking to us and wanting to know about this God, because things are going to get desperate amongst the world. We're seeing changes. We're seeing a lot of the birth pangs going on in the world. The world's going to want to know what's going on. And if we don't know, who's going to tell them? Who's going to tell them what's really going on? Who's going to have answers that are real truth? The economists are wrong. The politicians are wrong. The billionaires are wrong. All these supposed experts are wrong. But God isn't. God knows the answer. In the midst of all this trouble, God knows the answers. And we can have joy in the midst of it. Why is the church thriving in China when they are throwing people in prison and re-educating them for even daring to get together and have church even in their home? Why is it thriving? Because they're not losing their joy. They have the joy of their salvation even under persecution. They're not willing to give up what they believe even under persecution. You don't think you could do that, but you know what? You don't know who you are. You don't know that you have Christ in you. You have the greater one within you, and you could endure anything you have to endure because he put it in you. He gave you the strength that you need to endure everything you're about to face. And he knows what it is. And he knows how to prepare you for it. And if you'll just trust him, trust his grace, trust his mercy, trust his love for you, that he does not want you to fail. He wants you to overcome everything you face. But you have to be willing to look to him as God and Father and trust him. I encourage you to pray this prayer in Colossians. Pray it for yourself. Ask the Holy Spirit to lead you to pray it for other people. Learn to pray without constantly asking God to take away your problems, but ask him to help you, and for those that you pray to endure and to face with patience and joy, trusting him to bring good from it. Does that mean your problems aren't going to ever go away? No. You're going to learn to solve the problems with his wisdom. You're going to go through it. I'll end this by sharing this myself, because this is, it's a personal thing. I don't know, any of you have been around me the last month or so. I've had a knee I've been favoring a lot. And there wasn't anything wrong with the knee per se. There was something tight in the back of the knee. I don't know what it was. Everything worked fine, but going upstairs was difficult. Going downstairs was even more difficult. It was tight. Sometimes it would even hurt going downstairs. And it got better one time, and then all of a sudden it just tightened up again. I was awake last night, and just that still small voice of the Lord, lay your hand on it and pray for it. So I did. I prayed in spirit for quite a while. And this is a simple thing. I've heard other people talk about it, but it was a simple thing the Lord led me to do. I just prayed until I knew it was okay. I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel heat or some special sensation go through my body. I just knew it was okay. And then I prayed for a couple other parts of, things going on. And it was just something, because it's been something that's been ongoing for quite some time. It's just been, Colette's been a little concerned about me sometimes, the way I've been hobbling around, because I'd get up and all of a sudden it's like, ooh, okay, come on, warm it up. Yeah, here we go. This morning I'm fine. I didn't have there wasn't some big supernatural thing happened. But the thing is, I trusted him. I trusted what he led me to do, and I trusted that he had it taken care of. Because he can do what I can't do. And it's like, years ago I shared it here at this church. There are many times that we face difficulties, like maybe something in your body, and you get your scriptures out and you rat-a-tat-tat, confess them, and you confess them over and over and over and over again, like somehow the more times you confess it, the more it's going to happen. Well, it helps build it in you, but that isn't going to make it happen, okay? You have to just build it in you, but you have to trust him. You have to trust the one who actually can do those things. I can't do it. I can lay hands on you and believe for you to be healed, but I can't heal you. But he can. Jesus himself took your infirmities and bore your sicknesses. By his stripes you're healed. We have to trust him. And when we trust him, when we truly trust him, then does it matter if it feels better right away? No, it matters that I know he's got it. And when I know he's got it, it doesn't matter what the problem is. I'm good. I can be full of joy. I can be full of confidence. I can rest in him. And this is what the scriptures talks about the children of Israel when they didn't rest in him. They had to conquer a land. They had to go against giants. They had battles to fight. But the New Testament says they didn't rest in him. If you rest in him, you know he's got it. Whatever I face, I'm going to overcome it because God's got this. That's resting in him. It isn't sitting back with your hands behind your head and doing nothing. It's not being in turmoil. Not being all worried, not being all caught up and wrought up and letting the enemy steal your joy. Because the joy of the Lord is your strength. If the enemy steals your joy, you're weak and you won't overcome. You have to get your joy back and get strong and trust Him where your joy comes from. Trust Him that's going to bring it to pass. Because it don't matter how much you grow. It don't matter how big of a man or woman of faith you are. You still can do nothing without Him. And when we always remember to humble ourselves and remember that it's all about Him, as the Lord led me to say last week, give Him the glory. And that's the only reason I'm sharing that this morning, is other than teaching, is to give Him the glory. It wasn't me doing something like, "Oh, I'm such a great man of faith. I laid hands on my knee and it got better." I did what the Lord told me to do, and He did what He said He'd do. I can't minister by the Spirit up here because I'm so talented, because I'm so educated. I can minister by the Spirit here because He who is in me is greater than he who is in the world. And I can share what your spirit needs to hear today. And I can encourage you because He knows what's going on in your heart. And when I know it's all about Him and give Him all the glory, I can do amazing things. Because it's not about me. It's about Him. Father, thank you so much